Have you ever had the feeling that you're not good enough, that you can't measure up, and nothing you do will ever make you worthy? I think that feeling is much more common than we all realize. My guest today suffered under that, and it set his life on a very painful path. Biernacki, thanks for coming today to share your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is an honor to be able to do this.
Well, you grew up feeling like you weren't good enough. Where does that feeling come from?
From when I was very little, I experienced times in my life where I didn't feel worthy, so I always went above and beyond in everything that I tried to accomplish to get that satisfaction.
That's so hard. And as you got older, you dealt with those feelings of unworthiness by drinking, which a lot of people do.
Yes. So in high school, you'd start getting into parties and drinking, and then it just became a habit. And I remember in grade 12, for the first few months of high school, drinking just about every day. And then I was just like, I just can't keep doing this. I need to graduate. And I'd accomplished that, but then the drinking just, continued and got into a relationship.
Now you had that dream that so many people have, the white picket fence, the wife, all of that. You got married, but it didn't quite work out the way you hoped.
Yeah, and got into the marriage and the drinking continued, and it caused so many different issues in our lives. And then I had started, antidepressants and uppers and downers to try and cope with things, and things just got really bad in my life.
When your marriage ended, I know that opened up another painful chapter in your life. You were homeless. Money was a problem. Tell me about that season of your life.
Yeah, I went through a stage in my life where I felt like I was homeless. I was living in a truck camper out in the bush on town limits. We called it Serenity Acres because there was people another person in AA that was there. And went to continue to go into AA meetings to try and get my life on track, and just kept struggling for years. And eventually I got a job and just started to move forward.
Now you got remarried again, really getting your life back on track, but there was a lot of anger in you. Tell me about how that affected your relationship.
Yeah, so the first couple of years of my new marriage was it was all rosy and assumed going good. But my anger would get to me and cause a lot of grief, with my marriage and work and everything going on in my life. And I had to start searching different areas and different things inside of me to try and figure out what that was.
It wasn't just anger too, there was depression, anxiety. You would get clean, but you couldn't stay clean. So tell me about the struggle inside of you.
Yeah, so, with that anger and depression and everything, I would go back, get a couple of years sober. I'd go back drinking for a year, get 4 years, go back. And I just got to a point where, in my life where there was a few times I wanted to commit suicides, and my kids would call me every time and stop that. So I wouldn't act on it, but the thought in my mind was there. And I just told myself, like, I had enough. I need to do something different.
And you really saw that, like your kids calling you just at the moment you were going to take your life, as kind of a sign that God was intervening.
Yes, and I remember the last time I was going down the back road and that had happened, and then it was just not long after that I was in a terrible accident with a logging truck. And it was after that moment when things really started to change in my life.
So faith started entering your life. Tell me how God and faith in God really started changing you.
Well, I'd go to the local church and I'd start listening to the preacher, and I was really intrigued by the stories in the Bible and the events that had happened.
What made you decide to go to church? Was it that idea that I just need to find something different, that this isn't working?
Yeah, like I would go to AA and I get that relief, like a small relief, but I just felt like there was something more. So I would just go to church and I could just feel something different.
You're going to church and you're intrigued by what's happening there, but was there a moment that you decided, yeah, I'm buying in, I'm gonna give my life to God and see what happens?
Yeah, we were doing some stuff on the side there and counseling and with the church, and at that moment we just decided, and me and my wife decided to give our lives to the Lord at that moment.
So what does that feel like? Because for a lot of people, as people of faith, we just say, oh, I gave my life to the Lord. and everything changed. But what does that actually feel like when you do that? What changed inside of you?
It was like this satisfaction came inside of me, that there was a new life coming for me and just waiting that out.
Okay, so you're on this new faith journey, but your marriage is still in crisis. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened. Tell me about what was happening in your marriage.
Lots of struggles, like real life struggles, because of my anger, because of the hurts and pains in my life that I endured over the years. And now learning how to cope and deal with the things that I'd gone through and get healing from that.
And now, were you clean at this point? Is it pretty much licked, alcoholism?
Oh yeah, it doesn't even affect me whatsoever. I got 12 years sober and clean now.
And what was the key to that, getting clean for good?
Was healing myself, so I didn't have those pains inside of me that would cause me to run to try and suppress that pain inside of me.
So really facing it.
Yes.
So you're at this crisis point in your marriage. You're on a new faith journey. Your wife, Christine, is thinking of leaving. What happens?
I ended up going on this trip to Hawaii. And it was the hardest thing I could have ever done. And going to Hawaii by myself, and ended up having all these encounters with God in Hawaii.
So what was that like? What do you mean by encounters with God? What was happening?
I went to a church there with some people, and God put me into like a trance at the church. And God was just showing me all these things about souls and all these people coming into the kingdom. Was one experience. Another profound one was where they baptized everybody in Hawaii. We went down there early in the morning, me and Steve and another lady, and did this little baptism ceremony there. And then we stood in a circle, and she did this little salt and Hawaii leaf thing. And we stood in a circle, held hands, and said this prayer. And when we said amen, the beam of light shot through the sky, and we're like, wow, did that just happen?
Mm. So you had this time in Hawaii that was so good. What happens when you come home then to your wife, and what happens with your marriage?
Not knowing what to expect when I come home, I just stayed in prayer, and there was another crazy story that happened when I had come back, because God told me to give some money to the church 6 months previous, and I refused to. And I was at the church that Sunday, and the pastor was talking about giving to the church, and I'm like, oh my word, my wife was in church with me. That was just another miracle how that happened. And I ended up giving that money to the church, and all these miracles in our marriage started happening. And I just could not believe how faithful God was by honoring him in that. Mm.
So nowadays, tell me about your marriage.
My marriage is definitely way, way better. My wife is my rock, and she's given me the permission to travel and do all kinds of different ministries and go out there and reach people, on the streets and conferences. And she's there for me. She takes care of businesses that we've created together, and very good at discerning and stepping up to the plate in the background.
I look at your life. You had addiction. You are now free from that. You've had marriage problems. You're free from that. You've had poverty. Now you are a successful businessman. I know there's a lot of people in tough places watching this interview. What would you say to them about hope in the places that they are?
Yeah, never give up on hope. I was down and out, and I thought there's no way I could ever come out of this. But you know what? When you press into God, into that different realm, God will bring you through the struggles of your life. And you just have to really be obedient and listen and press into what he has for you, because each and every one of us are special in our own ways.
So good. Thank you so much for coming today to share your story, Chris.
Thank you.